What's the best thing about podcasts? It's that you can still listen to them during cream egg hunting season. Hunt down the rare white cream egg and be in with a chance to win a sweet prize of up to €10,000. Join us, fellow cream egg hunters, and find out more by visiting Cadbury Ireland on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome into the Sports Memo Betting Podcast for March 7th. March Madness is here, and we got one of our college basketball experts, mid-major Matt Josephs. Welcome into the podcast. How are you doing today?
It is fantastic. The month of March, of course, is our wheelhouse when it comes to college basketball.
It is, man. It's a fun time. We got the big tournament down the road a little bit, but the small conference tournaments just started this week, right, Matt?
Yeah, and then certainly Monday night was the first one, and you've got tournaments, and starting today for like the next month, you're going to have afternoon games. So productivity for your typical 9 to 5 could go down big time.
It really could. And we got some games we're going to talk about on today's slate, and also kind of get your thoughts on overall betting in the small conferences, which you mostly concentrate on, right, Matt? Not the bigger conferences like the ACC. Do you bet those? And also which conferences you focus on mostly?
Oh, I mean, certainly I'll look at it. I'm not going to shy away from an ACC game. Being in Virginia, I'm in ACC country and stuff like that. It's just, I'm not going to necessarily have a pick on North Carolina Duke or Michigan State because, there's a lot of great handicappers on this site who know a lot more about those teams than I do. But then, I'll look at the AAC and Conference USA and the Atlantic Sun and all these other tournaments where I perceive that there's some value.
That makes sense. And let's start off near the top of the card here, 603-604, an AAC battle here with Temple at UConn. Looks like UConn getting pushed up a little bit to -2. Also heavy totals movement here. Opened 145, down all the way down to 141.5. So what do you got here on Temple, UConn?
Well, meeting number one was but just over a month ago. Temple won that game at home 81-63, and if you remember, that's the game where Jalen Adams got hurt officially, and then you noticed after he got hurt, UConn looked noticeably different. They looked noticeably shaken by his injury, and that's when Temple kind of took the lead and ran away with it. And certainly the Owls looked very good. They were up 26 at halftime. They get the 18-point victory. Temple's a hard team to kind of figure out. They've played really well in certain games on the road. They won at Wichita State way back towards the beginning of conference play. They've also won a very interesting game at South Florida. But then they've laid some eggs. They played well in the first half at Memphis, but lost in the second half. They got crushed at Tulsa. This is a team that actually has one of two wins over Houston, with UCF being the other one. They've got the best backcourt in the AAC. Alston and Rose and Pierre-Louis are a trio that's very tough to handle. But UConn, look, this is a fan base that's dealt with a lot of losing as of late. But still, if you look at their last game, which they played against USF at home, UConn got a very good crowd. It was very rowdy there. They got the 2-point win. Before that, they lost by 2 at Wichita State. They lost by 4 to Cincinnati. So, look, this is a team that's rebuilding and everything, but without Tariq Gilbert back, and certainly, they've got try and get a little bit momentum going into conference play. Temple's got to win this game for the NCAA tournament, but I don't think it'll be easy coming up in UConn.
And you bring up the fact with Temple's good guard play, Austin Rose. Is this a team you would actually look to make a run in the March Madness tournament?
It would be interesting because guard play drives a lot of things when it comes to the March Madness. And as of late, they're starting to get stuff from their centers, whether it's Damian Moore or Ernest Aflakpee or even Justin Hamilton. This is a team that when they're playing well, they could beat a lot of teams in the country. The problem is when they're not playing well. If you look at that Tulane game, they won by 11, and they should have won the game, but they walked through a lot of it. They've got the talent. It's Fran Dunphy's swan song. Obviously, he's leaving at the end of the year, so they're going to be motivated to play well for him. But they're so inconsistent, so they could certainly win games in the tournament, but they could also be upset or lose in the first round rather easily.
Good stuff, Matt. And guys, we got a special coupon code here, WEEK49. That's WEEK 49 for 1 week of service in college basketball. All access service, the 7-day all access with mid-major Matt or myself, Drew Martin, week 49. It will give it to you for just $49, normally $119 on sportsmemo.com. So huge discount there. Week 49. Mid-major Matt, a great option here, especially with the small conference tournaments. I'd point you towards them just because he knows these teams. Obviously, you can hear it in his analysis. Really as good as anybody out there. And Matt, are there certain conferences that you think could show maybe a little extra betting value as far as maybe location or certain teams' matchups in the tournament? Tournaments that you're looking more at betting than others?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the AAC, and the AAC tournament is in Memphis, and we've seen this year, outside of the really, really, really good teams that have gone to Memphis, the Tigers are really tough at home at the Pyramid, and there could be some value. Now, granted, Vegas knows this, obviously, so they're not going to give you the best price on Memphis, but you know that Houston's going to be a favorite. You know UCF and Cincinnati will be towards the top as well. There could be some value potentially if Memphis gets the right matchup. It's funny because we're talking about Temple. They could play Memphis in that round, the quarterfinal round, which would be interesting because they just played like a week ago. But there might be some value with the home teams in some of these tournaments. We're going to talk about the Atlantic Sun. Lipscomb could be the home team if they keep all the way through. So it's really important when you look at these smaller conferences to see where the conference is, what fan bases travel. You've got the Summit Conference, which is in South Dakota, so obviously that's going to benefit South Dakota and South Dakota State. So one of the things I like to look at is certainly location because neutral courts, it's interesting, but if you get fans that travel, then it's not going to feel so neutral.
Yeah, and you bring up Cincinnati UCF in the AAC tournament. They're playing tonight, 609, 610 on the rotation number. We got 125 as the total at most shops right now, with the Knights laying 2.5 in Orlando.
Yeah, so 125 is very interesting because you're not going to see a total like that almost anywhere. But if you use that number, you would have gone under the last four meetings. Earlier this year on the 21st of February, Cincinnati won at home 60-55. They picked up 10 offensive rebounds in that game, which is interesting because UCF plays that zone. And with Taco Fall in the middle, you figured they'd be a little bit better rebounding team, but Cincinnati crashes the boards. The other meetings, last year, 77-40 Cincinnati, 49-38 Cincinnati, 53-49 UCF back in 2017. So you look at the 125 and you're like, wow, maybe this is going to go over, but it might not actually be low enough. Cincinnati has gone under the total in 25 of their last 32 road games. This is a team that prides itself on defense. Their offense could be better. I mean, the Cumberland kid is really good. UCF has gone over in 11 of their 15 lined home games because they've got a decent offense with B.J. Taylor and Aubrey Dawkins, and certain matchups play well for Taco Fall. I'll be interested to see. Anytime I can get Cincinnati as an underdog, I'll definitely take a look at it. But, the 125 may not actually be low enough.
Yeah, did you say one of those scores was 49-38?
Yeah, 49-38 last year when they played at UCF. The halftime score was UCF 19-15. Both teams shot below or around 35%.
That's pretty ridiculous, 49-38, Matt. And a lot of times, like we saw this with Virginia the last couple years, not necessarily this year, but when you get to this like 125 mark and below, it kind of scares a lot of bettors. But to your point, Matt, a lot of these games, the odds makers are kind of telling you something. It is low for a reason. Just what do you think it mostly is? Kind of longer possessions, or just the team's offensive efficiency versus the opposing defensive efficiency is just favoring the defense by that much?
Well, looking at Cincinnati, their last 5 games, they're 5-0 in their last 5 games, but they're averaging only 63.8 points per game, and they're shooting 35.9% from the field. Now, that's pretty bad. You would figure they would do bad, but they're actually holding opponents to 59 points per game, and 26 in the first half. And certainly, if you have an average score of 63-59, now look, I don't like taking unders in games this low because any sort of stretches of scoring will ruin that, but Cincinnati's gone under in all 5 games when the total's in the 120s, so clearly they're used to games like this. UCF has had 4 of those games. They've gone over in 2 of them and under in 2 of them, so it'll be interesting. I'll never recommend an under that low, but it's that low for a reason.
Guys, we're talking with Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. That's at Mid-Major Matt. Matt Joseph, sportsmemo.com. Works at ESPN. Richmond's got a show there, all things sports plus betting. And coupon code WEEK49 gives you his service for the next 7 days, all access for just $49, way less than $10 a day. Huge discount there, WEEK49. $2.49 at checkout for his service. You can also do it for my service as well. Let's do a threesome here of AAC games, ending with SMU Houston before we hit some small games here, Matt. 6-17, 6-18, the rotation numbers. Kind of a get-back game of sorts. 9 p.m. Eastern tip. 134.5 the total with Houston. You mentioned their record earlier. Very, very good. I believe only 2 losses on the season, laying 12.5 in Houston.
So there's a couple of things to consider here. Houston coming off their second loss of the season. They lost at home to UCF, and that's a rarity because Houston rarely loses at home. It's senior night, so you never know how emotions are handled with regards to senior night. Some teams get extra motivated. Some seniors get extra, emotional, and maybe they don't have their best game. Houston also has a road trip to Cincinnati, so maybe they have one eye looking forward, but I think the loss last time out snaps them back to reality. Of course, there are people betting on SMU, which is kind of interesting. If you look at SMU's last 3 games, they lost at home 67-55 to Wichita. They lost 52-49 at home to Cincinnati, and they lost 95-48 at UCF. The common thread was they have not shot very well in any of those games. This is an SMU team that had a lot of losses last year in terms of personnel. They're just not as good on the road. I think Houston wants to put forth a good effort. You never want to lose 2 in a row. Certainly you don't want to lose 2 in a row at home. Their last couple of home games, they beat South Florida by 12 points. They beat Cincinnati by 7. They beat Temple by 7. They beat East Carolina by 44. The blowout potential is there. I don't necessarily know why the line's sliding, but I'd almost wait to see if the line slides a little bit more, and maybe you get value with Houston at home thinking that they're going to win this game rather easily.
Matt, let's head to the smaller conferences here. NJIT, Lipscomb. Lipscomb the favorite to win the A-Sun. And before we get to this game, I want to ask your opinion because you know these small conferences really as good as anybody. Talking the A-Sun tourney here. Lipscomb was, I believe, a favorite of minus 200 around there to win the tournament. However, Liberty went into Lipscomb and won in their house. Why do you think the odds were that shaded towards Lipscomb?
I think that once again, it comes down to home court. I think when it comes to March, home court matters quite a bit. And we've seen, there's a lot of the tournaments that have it. And these smaller conferences need to generate attendance. So as many home games as they can play, they will certainly do so. We've seen a lot with the America East, with Vermont being home or UMBC being home or whatever. Home court advantage means a whole lot. Now, it's not a guarantee because you see some teams get tight in front of their fans, and you see sometimes people, overplaying or overpressuring themselves. So, yeah, the value is there in terms of taking Liberty, but the reason why Lipscomb is the healthy favorite is because they're home, and they've been such a good team so far this year.
In most tournaments, when you say home, that means the higher seeded team playing at home, correct?
Correct. So Lipscomb's the 1 seed. So as long as Lipscomb is in the A-Sun tournament, they will be home. That includes the finals when if it's Liberty or if it's North Florida, Lipscomb will be home as long as they are in the tournament.
And are there any conferences where the whole tournament is at the 1 seed?
Yeah, there are some. Well, not necessarily. I'd have to go down the list because each of these tournaments have their different things. You've got the Big South, which the first round was at campus sites, and then the next couple rounds are at the 1 seed. So, like, Campbell will be busy today, certainly in the Big South. But if Campbell gets eliminated, the championship game goes to the best seeded team. So a lot of these conferences have just different things, and that's certainly something you should look at. If you're going to dip into the smaller conferences, make sure to look at the tournament structure. Look at, like, the West Coast Conference, where Gonzaga has like a triple bye to get into the semifinals. The OVC has an interesting structure. They're continuing on, and Murray State and Belmont have I think a double bye in that conference. So make sure to look at the brackets certainly and know where the games are before you bet them.
Absolutely, that's very important. And you mentioned Memphis was at home. That's at Memphis's home court, or is the whole tournament there, or? The whole
tournament is at Memphis, and the AAC has rotated those. I believe either last year or 2 years ago, it was at UCF or down in Orlando, and they're trying to get the attendance because if you look at the AAC, there's no central location where you could say, all right, let's put the tournament here, and then everybody will travel to it. So they're like, okay, let's do Memphis, let's do UCF, I think it's at UConn coming up, or it was at UConn. So they're just trying to generate attendance however they can.
Makes a lot of sense for the smaller conferences. We got 139, 140, NJIT Lipscomb here, 145.5 the total, with Lipscomb's 1 seed laying 12.5.
Yeah, Lipscomb has won 3 in a row. They had a brief stretch in middle February where they lost to Liberty at home and they lost at Florida Gulf Coast, and that was kind of the reason why people were wondering if they were going to get the 1 seed. But down the stretch, they get the 3 victories. One of those 3 victories was against NJIT at home, 81-77. The other meeting between these two came in January 16th at NJIT, 70-52. And if you look at Lipscomb, this is a team that's humming offensively, 86, 87, 81 in their last 3 games. There was the brief blip that they scored 61 at Florida Gulf Coast, but like this team regularly puts up 75 to 80 points, especially in this conference. They play with a pretty good pace as well. Garrison Matthews, Rob Marbury, and Kenny Cooper are their big 3 scorers. They average around 45 points per game. So like if you're going to slow down Lipscomb, those are the guys that you're going to have to go to. NJIT, they're coming off an 83-78 win at Florida Gulf Coast. This is a team that preferably would rather play a slower pace, but they have had troubles getting that slower pace on the road. They played a 76-72 game at North Florida. They played a 77-73 game at Jacksonville. This is a team that's playing their 4th road game over their last 5. And certainly if you go back even farther, they're playing their 7th road game over their last 10. I wonder if there's some sort of road weariness for NJIT. Of course, Lipscomb and New Jersey are pretty far apart. And this is a team that was in Florida on Monday. So quite the travel schedule for NJIT in this one. I think Lipscomb's got a lot of the momentum. They obviously know what NJIT is capable of, only beating them by 4 at home just a couple of weeks ago. So I think Lipscomb gets their way to the championship game in the ASUN. It's actually in Nashville, Tennessee.
It is. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. So yeah, you're right. It is a lot of travel here. In with these small conferences, so like NJIT, I guess traveling to Nashville wouldn't be good, but like let's just say they were traveling to Richmond. How would they get there? Do you know?
Oh, goodness. Well, some teams charter. I don't know how they would do it necessarily in some of these smaller conferences, but, like there's teams that charter and there's some teams, I guess, if there's a reasonable bus trip. I know that there have been some schools, like last year, George Mason played Richmond and VCU back-to-back and basically spent like a couple days in Richmond and practiced in, a local school and stuff like that. So I'm guessing in some of these smaller conferences, to minimize the travel, maybe they leave early and go someplace else and then stay there. It depends on how these schools' budgets lay out.
Yeah. No, good point there. I mean, because the travel spot, especially from a New Jersey school to what the ASUN has a bunch of Florida teams, so I'm guessing they're used to it as far as the long travel spots. But you're right, it's a important point in the handicap. We got one more game here, Matt. Let's talk 137, 138, 7 p.m. Eastern tip. North Florida at Liberty. Liberty's the 2 seed. North Florida is the Ospreys, if you're wondering at home what their mascot is. 139.5 with 10.5 Liberty laying at home.
So this is the third meeting between these two. North Florida is actually on a 7-game win streak right now. They beat Liberty at home 75-70. That gave Lipscomb the 1 seed because Liberty was actually the 1 seed at the time. They lost that game, and now they're the 2 seed. The other meeting at Liberty was a 70-64 game. So you're wondering. So you're saying, okay, well, North Florida won this game and then lost by 6 at Liberty. They've won 7 in a row. But the biggest story in the last couple days, Noah Horschler is their leading scorer and their leading rebounder. He got suspended and then is transferring from the team. He's a forward type. Obviously, he averages 16 points and 9.3 rebounds per game. So, that's a big piece of their offense. They played last game without him. They've actually played a couple games without him. But against a team like Liberty, who will stretch out possessions, play tough defense, I think that's going to be a big factor. Garrett Sams is now the leading scorer at 12.2 points per game for North Florida. Liberty is 26-6 on the season. They've won 3 straight and 8 of their last 9. This is a team at home that takes care of business. They beat Jacksonville by 14. They beat Kennesaw State by 17. They have beat NJIT at home by 20. This is a team that when you're not as good as Liberty, they clamp down on you and you don't score. The under may actually be worth a look here because I think that North Florida is going to struggle a little bit. They want to get up and down. They won't be able to against Liberty in Liberty's gymnasium. They're really excited for this game there. And I just think, look, There's a chance that North Florida doesn't get out above 65. I think this is a lower scoring game, and I think the under might be worth a look in this one, even though, I'm not an under guy. I hate betting unders, but when the situation calls for it, I'll take a look at it. So I think the under might be worth a look in this one.
And this one is in Lynchburg, Virginia?
Yes, this one is at the Vine Center, and yes, it's an interesting matchup, to say the least, because North Florida at full strength might be able to give Liberty a battle, but I just, without the Horschler kid, without their leading scorer, I think that could be asking a lot.
And I'm looking at this now because I didn't know this, but that's a great find by you with Noah Horschler being out. He is one of their top scorers. He's their leading scorer.
Yes, he's their leading scorer and their leading rebounder at 9.3 rebounds per game.
Okay, and I see he was out, a couple games, and they played Liberty on the 23rd. So, he was out for that game, but they beat him, huh? So that's that was also a road game. I think Liberty also, look, when they suffer sometimes from what happens to Virginia. When their defense is on and the offense is off. They had a full week to prepare for this game. They won at North Alabama and then traveled to North Florida. I think it was more of a blip on the radar for them. If you look at Liberty also, the last 5 games, they've had 5 different leading scorers. And so this is a Liberty team that when their defense is on and when the offense is clicking and everybody's getting involved, they're very tough to beat. They know what's ahead of them. Richie McKay has done a great job at Liberty. I think they meet Lipscomb in the championship game, but I think the best play potentially in this one is the under. I like it, Matt. Good stuff, man, on the podcast. What else do you got cracking for this week?
Well, I mean, as I said, there's a lot of the smaller conferences, and certainly we'll start taking a look at the championship games when they come up. And, we've got a game that's, probably already going to be in progress at noon with the Radford game, and, the Big South is playing. And so, all I'm saying is this. There is some value in some of these conferences that you may not know a ton about. Looking at tomorrow, there's MAC games. There's A-10 games tomorrow, which is fantastic, and a lot more of the conferences will get underway. Murray State and Belmont will play tomorrow in the OVC against their opponents. The MVC is starting, so there's a lot of games coming up in these smaller conferences, and I think there's a lot of value to be played in them.
Man, great stuff. You obviously know your stuff. And guys out there, remember the coupon code WEEK49. That's WEEK49 at checkout, and you can get mid-major Matt Joseph's on Sportsmemos. Next 7 days, all access. Get all of his plays, 5%, 4%, 3%, for just $49. You can use it for mine as well, so you can get both of us for under $100. And it'll give you the next 7 days, all access. It's a great time to have Matt Joseph's service, just because all the small conferences are this week and next week. But a lot of this week's action, he'll have a bunch of plays up. He's got 3 up right now at sportsmemo.com. Check it out, and remember the coupon code WEEK49 at checkout. Matt, thanks for the time. Best of luck with your bets this week, man. We'll have you on next week, and we'll have Rob Vino on tomorrow talking college basketball, the big Saturday slate. So stay tuned tomorrow. Best of luck with your bets, guys. We'll talk tomorrow.
What's the best thing about podcasts? It's that you can still listen to them during cream egg hunting season. Hunt down the rare white cream egg and be in with a chance to win a sweet prize of up to €10,000. Join us, fellow cream egg hunters, and find out more by visiting Cadbury Ireland on Facebook and Twitter.
As a Club Ireland member, you can experience the beautiful game like never before. Savor the hospitality, the excitement on the pitch, and the best premium seats in the Aviva Stadium from just €100 per match. With 3, 5 and 10-year Club Ireland membership, you can enjoy exclusive football experiences, priority on away tickets, and an evening with Mick McCarthy. It really is a match day with more. Visit fai.ie/Club Ireland and be at the heart of it all.